Good evening, everybody. This is the Thursday, April 16th, 2026 regular Glencoe Village Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Let's have a roll call, please.
Trustee Hallwax.
Here.
Trustee Mielopoulos. Trustee Onderdonk. Here. Trustee Rosenblatt.
Here.
Trustee Rubin.
Here.
Trustee Scott.
Here.
And President Rowan.
Here. So we have a quorum. We're all here. We are live streaming the meeting on the Village's website tonight, and the video recording will be available on the Village's YouTube channel. First item on the agenda is consideration of minutes. The minutes for the Committee of the Whole on March 19th, the regular Village Board meeting on March 19th, and the closed session on February 19th, 2026 have all been circulated and reviewed by the board. The public minutes have been published online. Unless there are questions or comments, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll have a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Before we get to the next item, I want to move up the Glencoe Award winners recognition in the interest of not torturing the award winners by making them listen to the rest of this. So if we could do that.
We certainly can, and thank you, President Rowan. This is typically part of the Village Manager's report. Just a reminder on what the Glencoe Award is. This was launched last year by our Human Resources team to recognize employees who showcase the Village's core values. These awards provide supervisors and peers the opportunity to recognize exceptional work in real time, highlighting employee efforts that make a real difference in our organization and in our community. So on a quarterly basis, we have the opportunity to recognize those who have received the award over the course of the last 3 months. And I'm very pleased to note that we awarded 22 Glencoe awards in the first quarter of 2026. There are several who could not be in attendance this evening, and I'd love to just read off their names real quick. We have several maintenance equipment operators from our Public Works Department: Eddie Andrews, Raul Hernandez, Shayna Lesnovich, and Oscar Suarez. We have 2 records specialists, Jeannie Cermak and Mara Trusky, in our Public Safety Department. Our Human Resources Specialist, Talia Casera. Our accountant, Diane Harris. Customer Support Specialist, Catherine Erla. IT Support Engineer, Jakar Saunders, and Public Safety Lieutenant, David Veit. Gratefully, though, we have several folks who are in attendance, and we have, I guess they're framed certificates that we'd like to present to those individuals. Sammy, if you can hand out these, I'm going to have all of the individuals step up forward, and then I'll come down in a minute and shake their hands. But I want to read for these 4 individuals. The first is HR Manager Katie Dar, who was recognized for her leadership and support of employees through the HR on the Roll initiative, ensuring HR's accessibility for all of our staff team, including those on night shift, and helping our employees navigate the complexities of benefits and policies. Assistant Village Manager Adam Hall was recognized for his resident-focused approach in addressing the Metra train horn concerns, as he was serving as the primary staff liaison among multiple federal, state, local organizations and successfully got that resolved. Administrative Services Coordinator Emma Kraus from the Public Safety Department was commended for her leadership during a dispatch and records management software migration, ensuring strong communication and minimal disruption to service. And finally, Records Specialist Kelly Burns, Deputy Chief Andy Purley, and Assistant CFO Margaret Schwarz, who were all recognized for their collaboration on implementing a new parking management system, which is improving and modernizing our services. So all of those individuals are there. I'm going to come down. We're going to take a picture.
might be easier for you. Might be easier for you. I have a few things to say if you want to have a seat, just for a moment. But thank you, Village Manager Crowley, President Rowan, and village board members. I greatly appreciate this opportunity. This is not unlike having ice cream before dinner, so I do enjoy that. So thank you very much. We, as part of the overall strategic plan of the village, we constantly strive to recognize excellence in our employees. And this is another great story that I'm very pleased to tell you. We are today, or this evening, we are proud to recognize record specialist Kelly Burns for her exceptional vigilance and dedication in safeguarding the village of Glencoe. Kelly is joined by her husband Matt and her sons Owen and Connor. Which one's Owen? Owen, okay. Owen, let me hear you say, "Yay, Mom." Can you say "Yay, Mom"? All right. Playing the role of Owen is going to be Ben Newman. Very good. And a very, very either sleepy or shy Connor. So ceremonies like this are always near and dear to me. It's something that I'm always very, very pleased when family members come. And I know parents, as a parent, I was always very worried when my kids would go to a ceremony or go to a public event and making sure that they're not going to be loud or disruptive. There is no such thing here. I hope your kids are running around like maniacs. In such, Kelly did not feed her kids all day today, just to ensure. So reading this taken directly from the department commendation, record specialist Kelly Burns is being recognized for her proactive and careful handling of a suspicious email that appeared to originate from a records clerk in a neighboring municipality. The email included an attachment that appeared to be a grand jury subpoena addressed to our department and surprisingly well masked. Noting irregularities, however, within the message, Kelly exercised sound judgment and treated it as a potential phishing attempt. She promptly reported the email to the IT department and notified her supervisor, taking the additional steps of notifying her supervisor so the matter could be reviewed further. IT investigated the incident immediately and confirmed that the message was indeed part of a verified phishing campaign attack on the village that had also been sent to neighboring municipalities, some of which had unfortunately become victims. Kelly's vigilance, professionalism, and prompt action helped protect the village's systems and sensitive information from a potential security breach. As we know, again, from neighboring municipalities have suffered terrible attacks and still paying for those. Her attentiveness and commitment to cybersecurity are greatly appreciated. Kelly's diligence helped safeguard our organization. Her actions reflect more than just attentiveness. They demonstrate a deep sense of responsibility and commitment to protecting not only her own workplace, but the broader community we serve. Kelly's initiative and willingness to collaborate across departments and beyond organizational lines exemplify the very best of public service. Because of her quick thinking and proactive communication, a potentially harmful cyber threat was mitigated before it could cause damage in this village. Her efforts serve as a powerful reminder that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility and that one's awareness can make all of the difference. Kelly, your professionalism, teamwork, and dedication do not go unnoticed. Thank you for helping keep the village of Glencoe safe. It is our honor to present you with this Department Commendation Award. If you want to come on forward. So if we opportunity to take some pictures real quick, and then we take as we've normally done, a brief opportunity for those who are attending to go back and hit the streets because we don't want to leave the village unprotected, and then we'll move on with normal business. All right. Yeah, please. Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing, and thank you for allowing her to spend her time. And so it's, again, as a last point to that, in our professions, each and every one of us, we spend, quite frankly, half of our time awake at our professions, and all that time is taken away from families. So it's really important to me that families get to share in this and hear the good works. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Chief, and congratulations to all the recipients of the award. Let me just say, we survey residents of the village to see how we're doing. And the village gets very high marks. And I want to say on behalf of the board, we are not confused about why that is. That's because of our fabulous, fabulous employees who treat our residents right, to make them safer, who take care of them. Thank you. We are very grateful. Okay. The people who came for this can escape. And our next item on the agenda is public comment. Public comment is when we allow members of the public to address the village board on a topic that is within the purview of our jurisdiction, but not listed in another location on the agenda. What that means for tonight is that if you want to speak about the beach-related concerns, those are on the agenda, so hold off until we get to item 8A. If you want to speak to a member to an item that's on the consent agenda, we normally wouldn't talk about that, so alert us, and then we'll take it off the consent agenda so you can speak. Anyone who wants to speak should fill out a written speaker form, which are located at the back of the boardroom, and submit it to the village manager, and that includes the folks who've come to talk about the beach. Public comment time is intended as an opportunity for you to make comments to the village board. We'll listen to everything you have to say, but we will not ordinarily discuss or respond at this time. If appropriate, we may ask the village manager or other village staff to respond to questions or issues that are raised at a later date. All speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and to be fair to everyone, we're going to strictly enforce the 3-minute rule. Per our established policy, we're going to limit all public comments to 30 minutes. We'll ask that all speakers be respectful, civil, and non-repetitive. We ask that members of the audience refrain from applauding or making other comments during or after any comments. Okay. Are there any non-agenda item comments at this time? There aren't. Okay. The next, and of course, anybody who's here to talk about the beach, your time will come. Next item on the agenda is reports to the committees. The first report is the Committee of the Whole. We didn't have a Committee of the Whole meeting, so that's the end of my report. Next item on the agenda is the Finance Committee. Trustee Rubin is our chairman. Trustee Rubin.
Thank you. At Tuesday's Finance Committee meeting, the committee discussed the monthly financial reports for the month of March. General fund revenue performance for 7 of the village's revenue sources exceeded both the monthly budgeted targets and prior year's receipts. Those include sales tax, parking fees, ambulance fees, garbage service fees, sewer charges, vehicle licenses, and E911 surcharges. We also discussed that property tax receipts were received in both February and March, and that the village is awaiting the county's documentation still to denote if the receipts are for the second installment of 2025 or the first installment of 2026. Some first installment property taxes have been received this month so far in April, and staff anticipates more receipts in later this month. An update was provided to the committee on the progress of the construction of the golf clubhouse, and we also discussed changes in the schedule for the 2026 Community Investment Program. Village staff will continue to monitor commodity costs, in particular related to the conflict in the Middle East, fuel costs, especially diesel fuel, and IT hardware costs are continuing to rise. And that's what we talked about at the committee. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that report. The next report is the Plan Commission, and the Village Board's representative on the Plan Commission is Trustee Mihalopoulos. So, Georgia, take it away.
Thank you, President Rowan. At our March 25th meeting, we continued to discuss the Plan Development Ordinance development process. We provided guidance to the planning team about what types of projects should require a PD review process and what types of projects should be able to opt into a PD review process. Commissioners also agreed that the PD process should be required for projects that are large enough to have a significant impact on the village, while some small projects that are able to provide design enhancements should be able to opt into the process. The planning team is working on incorporating these comments into a draft ordinance, which will be discussed at the village board at an upcoming committee of the whole meeting. At our next meeting, which is on April 22, we will review the draft Glencoe streetscape and parking study. We will provide feedback to the planning team, which will be incorporated into a revised draft for village board review at an upcoming committee of the whole meeting prior to final review and adoption by the board. Thank you.
Thanks for that report. Next report is the Golf Advisory Committee, and the village board's representative on that committee is Trustee Hallwax. Joe.
Thank you, President Rowan. The golf course is, I'd say it's wet, and the staff's done a fantastic job to keep it playable and keep revenues coming in. In March, 350 golfers took advantage of warm days, pushing up revenues 53% over budget for the month. Senior membership sales were strong at 300 cards sold. There was over $300,000 in the permanent tee time program were received. That's $105,000 over budget. In the prepaid golf times, for those who don't know, that's to play 19 consecutive weeks beginning the first week in May. And the Golf Advisory Committee will be held Monday, April 20th.
Thanks for that report. The next report is the Sustainability Task Force, and Trustee Rosenblatt is the board's representative on that.
Thank you, President Rowan. The Sustainability Task Force met on March 24th, where they learned about the Save Glencoe Historic Homes program and discussed sustainability aspects surrounding the demolition and reconstruction of homes. They also received an update on the new Illinois battery law's impact on battery recycling, the Wesley Road buckthorn removal, and the Sustainability Action Plan progress. The task force coordinated event logistics for the Spring Donate and Recycle Day scheduled for Saturday, May 9th, where they will offer battery recycling options and distribution of the Hefty Renew Recycle Program orange bags at that station. The group developed awareness ideas for participating in Illinois Compost Awareness Week and plan to coordinate the Waste Not on Compost giveaway. The task force also reviewed its communication plan and developed content topics for April and May social media posts focusing on sustainability education. The next meeting is Tuesday, April 28th at 7 p.m.
Thanks for that report. The next report is the Council for Inclusion and Community, and Trustee Scott is our representative on that. Trustee Scott.
Thank you, President Rowan. At the GCIC's last meeting in March, the Council approved a schedule to meet every other month, so there was no meeting in April. However, members remained actively engaged on key initiatives. Council members continued working with local businesses to support the Good in the Neighborhood program and partnered with staff to create a flyer explaining the initiative and encouraging participation. The Council also prepared for upcoming community events, including the New Trier Transition Center's Higher Education Experience. This program offers hands-on learning opportunities for young adults with special needs as they transition into the workplace. Residents are welcome to volunteer on May 5th, with more information available on the New Trier Transition Center's website. In addition, members continued exploring training opportunities and potential donation drives through March and early April. The next GCIC meeting is scheduled for Monday, May 4th.
Thanks for that report. The last two reports are the Preservation Commission and the Tree Commission. Trustee Onderdunk is our representative on both. So, with no further ado, Trustee Onderdunk.
Thank you. At its April 13th meeting, the Preservation Commission continued its discussion of the proposed Preservation Incentive Program with a primary focus on the demolition delay period demolition delay period for honorary landmarks. The Commission is evaluating potential village code amendments in response to feedback by the village board at the March 19th committee meeting of the whole. The Commission considered several options, including an opt-out provision that would allow property owners to withdraw from the honorary landmark status, as well as the possibility of deferring any changes to extend the demolition delay while the pilot incentive program is underway. The Commission reached a consensus that Village Code amendments should not include an extension of the demolition delay for honorary landmarks during the pilot program period. The Commission, excuse me, the Commission will continue working with staff and the village attorney to refine draft code language for consideration by the village board at its May 21st meeting. The Commission also discussed the three-part lecture series in conjunction with the Glencoe Public Library, highlighting Glencoe's rich mid-century modern architectural heritage, exploring the defining architectural features of homes throughout Glencoe, and providing an overview of the benefits and opportunities associated with landmark designation. The Commission took no action on 3 applications for demolition at 49 Estate, 710 Strawberry Hill, and 626 Greenleaf. Next meeting of the Preservation Commission is scheduled for May 5th. And now I'll move on to the Tree Commission. The Tree Commission met Monday, April 13th. The Commission heard updates from staff on several items, including spring tree planting, the spring buckthorn curbside collection program, the tree nursery project in conjunction with the Park District, the golf course clubhouse buckthorn removal and restoration, the ComEd tree donation, and the Forest Edge tree planting plan, as well as the Sustainability Action Plan. The group coordinated on upcoming plans for a cleanup with the Park District at South School as part of the Earth Day celebrations on Earth Day. On April 22nd, a tree planting is scheduled for Central School for Arbor Day. Arbor Day is actually the day on April 24th, but there's a conflict with the school, so we have it, I believe, on the 22nd. We also talked about tree removal associated with single lot development and trying to understand how the tree preservation ordinance applies for many different kinds of construction. Finally, the group heard updates from Mr. Lammers, Commissioner Lammers, on the Cook County Tree Board Connections presentation, which stressed the importance of oak trees in the region. The next commissioner meeting for the Tree Commission is on June 8th. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that report. That concludes the reports of committees. The next item on the agenda is reports of officers. And first, the village manager's report. So, Village Manager Corrali.
Thanks, President Rowan. Good evening to the members of the board and to the public. I wanted to just go through a few items in my report this evening. The first is a brief summary of our first quarter department reports. These are located on page 21 of tonight's agenda packet. And I would just make a pitch to the community, those of you who are cruising to the village's website. All of our all of our quarterly departmental reports are included in our transparency portal, which is on the front page of the website. It's great information, very interesting. I just wanted to highlight a few items that are showing a bit of the area where our staff has been focused between January 1st and March 31st. The first relates to Freedom of Information Act requests. We've talked about these in the past. This is structured through the state and are commonly known really as sunshine laws. I will say we had a 32% increase in FOIAs received in the first quarter this year versus last year, 187 FOIAs. I will say some of those are simple and can be responded to within an hour or so. Many of them, however, are requiring extensive staff research, reporting, coordination with the village attorney or multiple village attorneys, and have just been more and more complex. We have very strict timelines with which we must respond, and I just wanted to thank the staff team that is leading that, particularly Adam Hall, who is coordinating that across all of our departments. It is a heavy lift, but one that we are always pleased to respond to, but I will say it is becoming more of a challenge across the entire organization. One other point I wanted to make that I think is just a stunning increase from year to year. Our social media presence has grown dramatically from 2025 to the present. Our Instagram followers have increased 30%, Facebook followers by 17%. We always get our most significant engagement through Instagram. That's really been the platform that's performed well for us. And I'm grateful to say that we have 4,279 Instagram followers as of the end of the first quarter. When Sammy Hansel started as our communications manager, I think we had about 1,000. So we've grown pretty significantly. That's a testament to her and the work that she's doing across the organization. Development Services has been very busy. 208 total permits issued in the first quarter. That's a 45% increase over last year. Permit revenue is up 72%. A 233% increase in commercial permits. That's unique for us. We don't have a large commercial district. So when those come through, that's a bit of putting on a different hat to make sure that we're processing those correctly. Public Works had a busy first quarter. We cleaned 23,000 linear feet of storm sewers between January and March. That's an increase of 230% over last year. And we actually had a few additional snow and ice events this year than last, as we know. That is one of our primary responsibilities in the Public Works Department, and they do a great job with that. Golf club senior memberships are up. Rounds played are a little down, and that's because it's been not the best first quarter of the year. Last year was actually quite a bit warmer. And I'm excited that our new restaurant vendor is operating with a limited menu while we have opened, and as the clubhouse nears completion, they will prep for a very large and dynamic menu that is going to, I think, greet the community very well. Public safety. Our police calls are about flat year to year. Fire EMS calls are down about 15%. That can be related to a lot of things. But training hours are also about flat, and I think it's just worth saying out loud that our officers completed 2,088 hours in the first 3 months of this year in both mandatory and additional training over and above that mandatory training requirement from the state of Illinois. As we all know, our public safety department is unique in that we have fully cross-trained officers in police, fire, and EMS services. That only makes the training requirements that much more difficult to complete. So great job by all of our departments. I think we're seeing some steady growth in activity, and we will continue to report out on these on a quarterly basis. As I said, all of this information is available in the packet tonight, and we would encourage folks to take a look at it. Okay. Next item is related to something that's been billed as the BUILD, B-U-I-L-D, initiative. Can we advance the slide? Thanks. So you may have read about this, heard about it. Certainly staff has been sharing some information with the village board. This is the Building Up Illinois Developments Initiative, or the BUILD initiative, which was introduced by Governor Pritzker in February during his annual budget address. It's currently under review by the General Assembly, And the build initiative, if passed, would have some pretty significant implications for all municipalities throughout Illinois, particularly communities like Glencoe. The build initiative would pretty significantly restrict local zoning authority in the intent to accommodate development that would have numerous by right provisions. This is something that President Rowan, Village Attorney Steve Elrod, Development Services Director Taylor Baxter, and I have all been quite keenly engaged on since it was introduced in February. I've asked Taylor to step forward and just share, for the benefit of the board and for the community, a brief summary of the initiative. And I would just note that there is some additional information that's been developed by the village attorney that we'll be publishing on the village's website to share with the community as this legislation continues. So Taylor, if you would.
Thank you, Village Manager Crawley, members of the board. This is as Village Manager mentioned, this is potentially a pretty significant bill insofar as how it could impact how the village is able to administer building regulations. Before we get into the details of what this bill does do, I want to talk about a few things that it does not do. The basis of this bill really is state preemption of a lot of local zoning control. A few things that it does not do, first of all. It does not require smaller lot subdivisions. We're going to talk about it allowing some smaller lot subdivisions. It does not require a developer to come in and only build smaller lot subdivisions. It does not prohibit larger single-family homes. It may allow some smaller lot development, but it does not prohibit developers or property owners from building larger single-family homes on larger lots. It does not allow high-rise or mid-rise multifamily buildings. We'll talk about what it allows as far as by right. Missing middle is the term that's being used by this bill. Smaller and more moderately sized multifamily buildings, but high-rise, mid-rise multifamily buildings does not allow those by right. Bill does not alter local zoning maps. It doesn't change where our residential districts are, where our commercial districts are. It leaves those in place. What it does alter is what can be done specifically in those residential districts. It does not subsidize affordable or non-market rate housing. This is really intended to remove hurdles to market rate housing, but it does not provide subsidies for affordable or non-market rate housing. It doesn't replace local building or fire codes with one really specific exception, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which is a single stair reform. It doesn't prevent developers from building off-street parking. It does have some restrictions in what off-street parking requirements a municipality can enforce, but it doesn't prevent, if you want to build off-street parking, it doesn't prevent developers from doing that. So, as proposed, the Building Up Illinois Developments Act. And I'd note that we don't know where this is going to end up. This is still working its way through the General Assembly. We could end up with a lot of this becoming state law. We could end up with this just being the starting point of a negotiation. We don't really know at this point what path that's going to take. As I mentioned, the legislation is intended to help remove roadblocks to constructing small and mid-sized housing throughout Illinois. Just for some background, we did adopt our new comprehensive plan in 2024. In that plan, the Plan Commission and the Village Board also talked a lot about accommodating small to mid-sized housing in Glencoe. That was a big part of that discussion. Where that plan landed was some pretty direct recommendations for making it easier to build location-appropriate multifamily housing in specific parts of the village through a public process, while continuing a dialogue about allowing what would be appropriate to be allowed in other parts of Glencoe. What Bill would do is it would preempt a lot of that discussion and prevent the village from enforcing some restrictions that are currently in place on this type of development. So I mentioned that just to note that the village has talked about this quite a bit and is in agreement with some of the goals of this legislation. But we're going to talk about how the very different path that this would take as compared to the comprehensive plan that was just adopted. A few key points, and these are all spelled out in a lot of detail in the Elrod Friedman emails that were sent out last month. I believe that's also going to be posted on the village website, which goes into really quite a bit of detail. I'm just going to provide an overview. of essentially what's in those emails. First, allowing ADUs, accessory dwelling units. These are also known as granny flats, coach houses, on all single-family lots. With some exceptions, these are currently not allowed in any zoning districts in the village. The comprehensive plan has a recommendation that we discuss where they'd be allowed and where they wouldn't be allowed. Build would essentially allow them in all single-family residential lots. Limiting off-street parking requirements. This builds on the 2025 legislation, which we've discussed, and we'll discuss it a little bit more later tonight, which limits municipalities' ability to enforce off-street parking minimum requirements. This builds onto that and adds some additional restrictions, additional limits on what a municipality can enforce as far as requiring off-street parking. Again, if a developer wants to come in and build condos or commercial space and provide off-street parking, it doesn't prevent them from doing that. Single-stair building code reform. This is probably the most technical of all of these. Building codes in the United States are a bit unique in that often they require two separate stairway egress points. That's not the case in many other countries, and this has been a point of discussion throughout the country. Requiring multiple points of egress from a building can limit the footprints or require larger footprints for buildings. So the intent of this would be to allow some smaller scale multifamily housing by only requiring a single stair exit if other certain conditions, fire protection, sprinkler systems, etc., are provided. Standardized impact fees. We talked about this last month, I believe, at Committee of the Whole. Right now, there's really a patchwork of impact fees throughout the state. What this would do is it would provide a formula and some standardized fees that each municipality would be required, if it wants to have impact fees, to implement. You couldn't create your own impact fees for different types of development. The purpose of this is likely to prevent municipalities from effectively prohibiting the types of development that we're going to talk about in just a second, the missing middle housing development, through impact fees that might effectively prevent them. The next two are probably the most significant, especially number 6, but number 5 is also significant. The third-party plan review and inspection framework. This sets very strict standards for how long a municipality can take to do plan reviews of building permit applications and to schedule inspections, perform inspections. I note that currently Glencoe is basically meeting all these standards with very few exceptions. Where I could see this potentially causing some issues going forward is we use third-party plan reviewers, inspectors, who also work for other villages. This could potentially put some pressure on them. What happens here is if you don't meet these deadlines, an applicant can pull their application out of a municipal system, use a qualified third-party reviewer, and basically have their project privately reviewed and privately inspected. As I said, we currently are in line with these timelines. Potentially could cause some ripple effects, which might impact us later on. The last one, which I'll spend the most time on, missing middle housing. This is the most impactful of all of these. What this is not really intended to do is to allow by right, as I said, large mid-rise or high-rise buildings. It is intended to allow by right in residential districts throughout the village what's being called missing middle housing. If you look at the Elrod Friedman email that went out about missing middle housing, there are various types that are included here: duplexes, triplexes, cottage clusters, which are smaller homes arranged typically around a courtyard on a single lot, townhomes, stacked flats up to 8 units. That's what is intended to be allowed with a significantly reduced local ability to prohibit this type of development. A few things to note here. This would require us to amend a significant part of our zoning code, significant parts specifically of our residential zoning code, if this were enacted as currently proposed. A lot of our restrictions dealing with minimum lot sizes, setbacks, lot coverage, we would no longer be able to enforce as currently written. It would have a very significant impact on our ability to enforce our current zoning regulations. We would have to significantly amend the zoning code. As I mentioned, lot sizes. This is a really big part of this. Currently, we have 4 residential zoning districts: RA, RB, RC, and RD. RA, RB, and RC all only allow single-family residential development. The minimum lot size right now, as recently adopted in RC, is 7,000 square feet, recently reduced from 10,000 square feet. The specifics of this are potentially require some additional interpretation, but the way I read it, a 7,000 square foot lot right now, you'd be allowed to, by right, subdivide into 2 lots with up to 4 units per lot, because those lots would be 3,500 square feet each, and a 3,500 square foot lot, you'd be allowed to have a 4-unit building by right on each of those lots. Or a single 8-unit building on a 7,000 square foot lot. 20,000 square foot lot, that's the minimum lot size in our largest zoning district, the RA district. 8 units, by right 8-unit subdivision for 8 single-family dwellings with ADUs. All of these minimum lot sizes and the allowable by right unit counts, it's on a sliding scale, so the larger your lots, the more units you're allowed to put on each lot. That goes up to, you could, on a 20,000 square foot lot, you could do 2 8-unit buildings, or 8 single-family dwellings with a sliding scale in between them. A 1-acre lot, we do have some 1-acre lots, large lots. For example, there's a lot that's under construction right now with a large single-family home on Greenleaf. That's just over 1 acre. Right now it accommodates about a 12,000 square foot house. That lot could have been subdivided under our current zoning standards into 2 single-family homes around 6,000 square foot each. Under the Build Act as currently proposed, that would accommodate 17 single-family homes or 5 8-unit buildings. So a very significant difference. Again, a sliding scale. It could accommodate a combination of townhomes. If you think of a standard Chicago 3-flat or a 6-flat, that type of building could be allowed by right. I'd mention, in addition to the lot sizes, there are some changes to to municipalities' abilities to enforce setbacks. We'd have significantly reduced ability to enforce setbacks. Lot coverage, we'd have limits on lot coverage, floor area. It does include a provision that you could set height limits of no less than 35 feet. Our current single-family residential height limit is 31 feet. So again, this would not allow by right. You couldn't stack 8 units on top of each other. You have an ability to build 8 units on some of these larger lots. Couldn't be an 8-story building. Think of probably a 3-floor building with some basement units would be what you would see. But again, significant changes to the by right subdivision ability and by right housing types. These types of developments, they would be allowed. They would not be required, and they would not necessarily happen. There's a lot of other factors that come into play here. Once you hit 3 units in a multifamily building, your building code requirements significantly change. Your costs can significantly increase at that point. You're using a different building code. That will play a role in developers deciding what could and couldn't be built. And there's a lot of other market factors that could come into play here. Developers could continue to decide to build larger single-family homes and try to sell one home as opposed to subdividing and trying to sell multiple homes. But in summary, this would present a significant challenge as far as amending zoning codes. We would have to amend a significant part of our residential development regulations, and it could potentially have a significant impact on the types of development that we see in Glencoe. I'll turn it back over to the village manager unless there's any questions for me.
Thank you, Taylor. That was a really nice, comprehensive summary of what is a really complicated set of legislative goals that the state is currently working its way through. I wanted to just mention briefly that our councils of government, particularly the Northwest Municipal Conference, the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, both of which we are members of. I serve on the legislative committee. When she returns from family leave, Deputy Village Manager Nikki Larson also serves on that committee. We have had several meetings focused solely upon this legislation. And I think, as Taylor said, it's working its way through. There is no real understanding of how it will find its way through the legislative process and what will remain, if it remains intact fully or if there are adjustments or amendments. Our assumption is that there would be some level of adjustment or amendment to what has been presented. I thought I'd turn it over to the village attorney to just make mention of the fact that a number of our neighboring communities are talking about this as well, and maybe you can just summarize a little bit of that conversation.
Thank you, Manager Corrali. That was indeed an excellent presentation. Our law firm was surprised that when this bill was introduced by the governor in early February, that it received such little fanfare. That's why we took it upon ourselves to put together a series of 5 different alerts summarizing the impact of the statute. To many, it brings a very welcome reform, but to the communities that we represent, and as you know, we represent a number of communities in the North Shore, including 3 that surround Glencoe and Glencoe itself. This would be very concerning, as was noted in the presentation. It essentially preempts local zoning, and in the communities that we represent, particularly Glencoe, zoning has been very deliberate and very carefully determined as to the sizes of lots and the protection of a culture and a beauty and an environment that exists in Glencoe. Several of our clients and your neighbors have started to take initiative and started to take action. There are letters going out to state to members of the representatives of the state legislature that represent the various communities. Phil, you may have received a letter that we help provide for the Village of Deerfield. The City of Highland Park is putting out a letter. I know others are beginning to express concern, respectful concern, but concern about the breadth and scope and some dangers of the proposed legislation, and offering alternatives. Maybe some of the goals are good, but the ways that this particular statutory scheme is put together could be harmful. Maybe there are ways that collectively and collaboratively local governments can work with the state to accomplish, as they have on affordable housing and other issues. And that's so the communities are, particularly in the North Shore, finally waking up and saying something. And I have provided you with a lot of information that you've already seen, but I'm glad that you're going to be posting it on your website.
And thank you, Steve. I think it's important to note that we recognize, all of us in the entire greater Chicago region, all the 6 collar counties, that this is something that we want to be mindful of from the standpoint of individual community needs and concerns, but also collective community needs and concerns. I will be participating in a meeting tomorrow afternoon with 7 other North Shore municipalities talking about possible alternatives to present to our legislators. As Steve mentioned, Village of Deerfield put out a letter to Senator Morrison and Representative Morgan that I think offers some thoughtful alternatives for consideration, and I do think that is what our legislators are seeking. We are hearing that from them, that they want to understand the concerns, the impacts, and as Taylor walked through some of what those changes could mean, you could see wholesale changeover in all of our residential districts if something like this, as it's been submitted, were to pass. And so, what we wanted to make sure, as Steve mentioned, this hasn't been talked about all that much, which is shocking to me. We wanted to make sure to provide this outline of it, and as I said, provide information on the village's website, and to continue to share information with the community and with the village board. And really, just tonight is an opportunity to share this information. If there is any initial board feedback that you'd like to share with the staff as we continue to work through this, now is a great time, or any time over the next couple of weeks. And we will continue to keep you apprised on that.
Okay.
I do have one other item.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Let me.
Yep.
We're still on this. One of the things we find in village government is that when something is about to happen near wherever our residents live, we hear from them, and sometimes they're mad because they're, this is happening and it's happening near me. They may be outraged, enraged, irate, whatever. One of the things we're going to try to do is this legislation is considered is to make sure that that it's not only the village that reaches out to our local state reps and to our state senator, but our residents do too, because some of these changes you can debate whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, but I promise that some of these changes, if they happen in your neighborhood, is likely to cause your heads to explode. And so we would like to get this out before they happen, because after this is legislation, it's too late. Okay.
A couple of quick things to add to the end of my report. These two dates that are up on the screen have already been mentioned, but I'm going to mention them again because we are getting an awful lot of outreach from the community, curious about when they're taking place. Donate and Recycle Drop-Off Event, Saturday, May 9th, 10 to 1, Southeast Commuter Parking Lot. We have all of the information available on the village's website as to what can be collected or dropped off that day, and we encourage everyone in the community to participate. Our annual Spring Cleanup Day, this is when everyone puts out to the curb everything they couldn't drop off at Donate and Recycle Day. That is all day, Saturday the 16th. Just a reminder, they will start at 7 a.m. If they go past your house at 7:05, they're not coming back later that day. So make sure whatever you have to dispose of as part of that is out at the curb by 7 a.m. Again, we have all the information about what can be placed at the curb on the website. We'll be pushing that out in e-news tomorrow and over a series of social media posts in the coming few weeks. And the last thing I wanted to mention it relates to an event that we hosted here in this room yesterday. This, as you may or may not recall, is not only the village board's meeting space, the council chambers, but it is also the Village of Glencoe's Emergency Operations Center in the event that an emergency requires us to assemble the space. We were privileged to have our partners from Cook County Emergency Management and Regional Security attend an event here yesterday, which was a full-scale tabletop exercise that included about 20 of our staff team from all of our departments, included representatives from Family Service of Glencoe, the Glencoe Park District, District 35, and we were working through what we would do in the event that our community was hit by a tornado. This was a live event. This was with a series of unknown factors inserting themselves throughout the day. Just as we'd come up with a plan, some new information would be received over the radio or via phone. It gave us a real opportunity to sit, work, and talk about the things that we need to do as a collective in the event that our community is in the throes of an emergency. It was an excellent training opportunity. Not everything went perfectly well, and that's exactly the point. But a special thanks to Cook County, to Chief Loughran, to Lieutenant Ken Pasoza, who really took that event himself to make it into what it is. It's something that we're going to be doing on a much more regular basis, and obviously the incidents will change, but the concepts are all the same. This is the kind of critical event response training that is so important as we continue to find ourselves in the throes of unique weather. I will say we joked a bit that the event was all day Wednesday, and Tuesday night we had launched the virtual EOC, and about a dozen of us were in our Teams chat talking about the impacts of the storms that were rolling through, and they were not insignificant impacts, to the point at which we were thinking we might have to actually launch the actual EOC. Good thing it was already set up for the tabletop exercise. We did not have to do that, but these are events that are going to impact our community. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe never, perhaps, but also could be later on this evening. So that was something that was reinforced by Cook County over and over again. It was a great event, and just thank you to everybody for their dedication and participation in it. It makes our community stronger. With that, I will stop talking. That is the end of my very lengthy report tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for the very lengthy report. The next item on the agenda is the village president's report. There are 9 proclamations. In the interest of the brevity of life, I'm not going to read the proclamations, but all of the proclamations have been published online, circulated to the board. So if there aren't any comments specific to any of them, is there a motion to approve the 9 proclamations?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I think we can have a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The proclamations are issued. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes items that have been published online for the community. They've been reviewed by the board members individually or perhaps as a part of our committee of the whole discussions. We don't think these warrant any specific further public discussion. Is there, and unless there are any comments, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. On this, we do need a roll call.
Trustee Hallwax.
Yes.
Trustee Mealopoulos.
Yes.
Trustee Underdunk.
Yes.
Trustee Rosenblatt.
Yes.
Trustee Rubin.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
The consent agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is regular business. The first item of regular business is consideration of an ordinance amending the Village of Glencoe Municipal Code concerning parking enforcement, and penalties. I will ask our Public Safety Director, Sean Loughran, to present. And then, if there are folks who came to talk about this or the related beach issues, I would invite them once the presentation is done. And it looks like Monica Sarna, our Public Works Director, is also going to present. After they've presented to us, then I'll ask for public comment. Okay.
All right, thank you. So I wanted to start with some background. This is a topic that we've been working on for quite a while, so I wanted to give you the history of how we got here tonight. So starting back in 2025, the village staff and the Glencoe Park District had met several times to debrief on comments and concerns that we had heard from nearby residents of the beach throughout the 2025 beach season. So through these discussions, we were trying to come up with ideas and solutions, and what we thought is we really needed to hear what the problems were from the residents in a totality. We wanted to make sure we weren't just addressing one person's concerns. We wanted to make sure that these were concerns that were felt by the entire neighborhood. So on February 9th, we held a listening session. In that listening session, we reviewed the existing parking as it is now, as it was for the 2025 season. And we also presented some research that we had been doing on our nearby neighboring communities who also have beaches. So that looked at whether those communities, whether those beaches had designated parking lots, and how that affected the on-street parking regulations in the nearby neighborhoods. What we heard through that listening session was a need for improved signage, not only in the neighborhoods for parking, but also on the access ramps to the beach. We heard that there were problems that we were seeing on the really nice weather days, especially on the weekends, of overcrowding, vehicles blocking crosswalks, vehicles blocking driveway access, parking illegally, and also some hazardous driving that we saw as beachgoers are circling the area looking for parking. When they saw a spot, they would gun it to get to that spot. So obviously not behavior that we wanted to see in that area. With that, we also heard some concerns about criminal activity taking place in the area, mostly during hours after operations had ceased for Lakefront Park and the Glencoe Swimming Beach. But there are also other various complaints about maintenance issues and beach policies, which were something that the Park District could take action on. So what we're presenting tonight, and I want to be clear, is the ordinance changes to the municipal parking ordinance. What I want to present now are some of the outcomes of that meeting and the continued conversations with the Park District. These are administrative changes, so this is not what we're seeking approval for tonight. However, we welcome your feedback. I will say we are still welcoming feedback from the residents as well. So some of the changes that we're looking to make is adding new pavement markings on the street to create designated parallel parking spots within the areas adjacent to the beach. We feel like this will create a more orderly parking area in which we're not allowing people to get too close to the parking lot or too close to a driveway or a crosswalk. It'll also allow for easier enforcement for public safety when those parking rules are violated. We've coordinated with the Park District to figure out and direct those beachgoers where to go when there is no parking, right? Instead of circling and waiting for a spot, we want to give them a clear message to say, here's where it's overflow parking. And so that will be our commuter lots. We want to make sure that that is messaged appropriately, both from the village and the Park District. So a big part of all of this and the changes that we're making is public education and outreach. So there are some operational changes that the Park District is making to their beach. So those changes need to be communicated, but also our parking changes and then information on overflow. All of that public education and outreach we are coordinating with the Park District on. So we are introducing some new municipal parking ordinances, and I'll let Chief Lochran speak to those. But one of the key aspects of that is within this beach zone is to increase the fines and penalties to essentially double what those fees would be throughout the village to help with that enforcement overall. And then I think, with the amount of times that the village and the Park District have met to coordinate on this, we've modified our staff focus not only with public safety but also with the beach operations to be focused and unified on looking to enforce and make the situation better. So the Park District, as I said, they were reacting to some of the operational and maintenance complaints separately, and they'll be changing some of their hours and maintenance practices. And then one of the things going forward, communication. So we have sent out a letter to all of the residents who attended or were invited to that initial listening session. I can't say that they've all received those yet. Those were put in the mail. But we have also tried to email them the information, and we're still accepting feedback from them on those administrative changes. Any questions on those before we review the ordinance?
Thank you, Director Sarna. So those are the initial, as Monica had highlighted, we're within our authority without board approval to initiate these administrative changes, and those are the things that we gathered information that were best practices, that were solutions for our surrounding communities. As she had highlighted, we have done a great deal of research for communities that experience similar problems, but that also have additional resources that aren't available to us, mainly surface parking that's solely available for beachgoers. In continuing on that, before moving on to the recommended amendments for the Glencoe Municipal Code, prior to that, or before we get into the detail of that, want to talk about what's already on the books, what we already have accessible, and what we already use, and what's specific to the Lakefront Park area. As we all know, and we likely have all had to call in on occasion, there is, to receive permission, there is no overnight parking on any village street after 2 a.m. Specific to that targeted area, you are not allowed to park, if you're not aware, any street that's adjacent to the park. You're not allowed to park on any of those service streets past 10 p.m., which is a great means of, and you hope is a great means of abating those problems. As discussed, a lot of these issues that are centered around vehicles. One of the things that we had discussed and considered was the possibility of initiation of a restricting parking within the entire area solely to individuals who have village vehicle stickers, thereby as a vehicle pass. That is within our authority. That is constitutional. Elrod Freeman, our village attorney, has drafted, or has conducted research, and it is within our authority and something we considered, but not initially. It's something we feel like we should consider a number of compound steps as highlighted with the administrative steps, and also the adoption of new ordinances and modification of our present ordinances, and take and wait and see, and look and see if that is going to help us. None of us feel there's going to be one single silver bullet that can solve this problem with one fell swoop. That was on advice of all the surrounding agencies as well too. They all said the same thing. It was a number of series of different things that helped them solve their problems. So as highlighted. Also, another thing is we thankfully you approved earlier. In 2026, we changed the basic parking violation fine from $25 to $50. It was believed at that time, when we did, again, some research and consideration and interviews with the man in the street, that $25 fine for a parking offense, what we were finding, particularly in the uptown area in the business district, was that people were just leaving their cars, getting a $25 fine, and didn't care. Because it was essentially the same thing you would pay for a parking spot in any other municipality. So we were under the belief, and we operated with your authority, we raised that minimum fine to $50. We found almost immediately that had a positive effect. I can say specifically on 2 different occasions I was present when a resident came in to pay their ticket and said, $25, I didn't care, but 50, can you knock it down to 25? I'll still pay it. We did not reduce the fine, but I can say on 2 separate occasions that had that effect. Using this as a specific, one of those things, which I'll talk about later, but that was one of the considerations that we had. So that is village-wide, and particularly was effective and is continued to remain effective in the uptown area. Manner of parking, which is one of the 2 amendments we're seeking. In review of manner of parking, in generally, the village has not needed very structured or specific village ordinances. We've been able to get by, but as times change, we have to modernize our ordinances and update the village code, which is something that we're underway doing right now, a comprehensive update across the board. But as in respect to manner of parking, that specifically outlined the control of that area, that parking in the downtown area, which designated you must park within lines. But that ordinance was only specific to the uptown area. It did not have the authority across. So that's what we're seeking to amend it, so we can then stripe designated areas and provide structure to residents, structure to visitors, and that way we can again provide that, and then also gives us the authority to issue citations if someone is outside of the lines, quite frankly. Stopping, standing, and parking prohibited within specified places. What this is a best practice. We already had the authority to adopt the Illinois Vehicle Code for parking offenses. However, it was a generic means. We would just issue a citation for a generic offense, and then as officers would issue that offense, they would have to write the notes on the citation itself. It's great. It gives us a means of holding people accountable, but it does not provide us with the opportunity for a data grab. And in true, it was kind of cutting a shortcut. What we're seeking is for the adoption of the Illinois Vehicle Code, and which would cover us very specific. Every single offense would give us the opportunity then to cite that specific offense. Also allowing us to enforce specifically for sidewalks, intersections, crosswalks, bridges, railroad tracks, near fire hydrants, in front of driveways, and any other location where signage restricts. And that's directly in response to citizen complaints and what we were hearing. It gives us that opportunity. And the third and the most important, and which is included for a map for your reference, is the enhanced penalties for a high-demand parking area. This is where we get into where I talked about and discussed the increase of a $25 fine to a $50 fine, which we found is already effective. What this does is it increases in this designated area, this area where we are experiencing a significant number of complaints and traffic, where we're hearing complaints from residents. This increases that immediate fine from $50 to $100. I can say personally, as I've already provided you with information, I've seen it to be effective in the downtown area. I feel this is a first step for wrangling this beast here as part of a comprehensive long-term plan. Now, as I mentioned, and it is not just year-round, also too. It is highly specified and focused only from May 1st to October 31st, which is that peak beach-going season. We extended it, if you're curious as to why, who is going to the beach all the way through October. We did experience some unseasonable or uncommon seasonally warm days, and we wanted to make sure we had that tool in our tool belt to ensure if we do have any kind of shift of that climate. And also, lastly, this also increases, and this is mandated by state statute, it allows us the authority to increase for handicap violators to the maximum penalty of $350 per offense. As ever, I always stressed on the officers, and I always stress to the public, our goal is not to issue as many citations as possible. Our goal is compliance. The ultimate goal is 0 offenses and 0 citations. But this is important for us, and this gives us not only a better tool, but a better data tracking tool to make sure that we are focusing in the right area. Now, as highlighted, we've heard the residents and recognize that there are indeed problems. We've also heard from residents who privately, not just in our one-on-one meeting here, but privately also individually have reached out to us, and they've stressed, please do not overreact and be careful with the implementation. We stress that these are considered the first steps. These are the first steps in an overall plan based on careful analysis of the best practices of those surrounding communities that have experienced similar problems and use these tools and similar tools at solution. Our thought is to implement these elements, monitor and consider additional options if deemed necessary in the future. So now, if there are any questions that I can satisfy, or Monica can satisfy.
Thank you for the presentation from both of you. Before we talk about it, there may be residents here who want to talk about the issues that they've come to the village about or their concerns. So I'll invite them now, and my only request, if you want to talk about it, is I hope you've signed up so that we can do this in an orderly fashion. So, and then the village board will talk about it. But let's give our residents a chance now. Okay, anybody who wants to talk? So, could you guys grab that, bring it up so we know? Okay, well, thanks. Tell us who you are, and we'll give you your 3 minutes. And if you've used those up, we're always willing to talk to you privately after meetings. Send us notes, but have at it.
Great, thank you. My name is Jeff Shapak. I'm a resident of Glencoe. Good evening. Several months ago, the Village and Park District met with residents near Lakefront Park and Glencoe Beach here in this room. We took the time to explain in detail what we are dealing with during beach season, including traffic value, speeding, and unsafe parking conditions on residential streets. Since that meeting, there has been no meaningful follow-up or continued dialogue with residents. This week, a letter outlining proposed changes was mailed. Many of us have still not received it, and I only learned about it after speaking with Village Manager Corrali, and he shared it via email this morning. As a result, the residents most directly impacted are largely not here tonight, not because they don't care, but because they were not given notice or an opportunity to participate. We're expecting a collaborative process. We're expecting proposals to be shared, discussed, and refined with neighbors' input before anything was brought to this board. That has not happened. Now turning to the substance. The ordinance focuses on enforcement and increased fines. That is not a solution to the problem we've raised. The issue is not just illegal parking. The issue is that our residential streets have effectively become overflow parking lots for non-residents going to the beach. That brings traffic, congestion, speeding, and safety risks for families and children who live there. Enforcement after the fact does not fix that. We need to address the source of the problem, which is unrestricted non-resident access to parking in and around Lakefront Park and Glencoe Beach. Other North Shore communities have already solved this. In Winnetka, non-residents are prohibited from parking at Tower Road and Maple Street beaches. They are directed to park in Hubbard Woods and Walker Bike In. In Lake Forest, vehicles without a city sticker are ticketed when parked east of Sheridan Road, including at the beach. Non-residents are directed to park at the Lake Forest train station lots. In Kenilworth, beach access itself is controlled through resident passes. These communities are using lawful resident priority tools to manage capacity, sanitation, parking spillover, and safety at sensitive lakefront assets. Glencoe is the outlier. Lakefront Park street parking remains free and comparatively easy to access, and that is exactly what's driving the problem. And we know non-resident demand is not insignificant. The village's own recent lakefront materials show that usage is meaningfully mixed. One 2024 packet reflects approximately 56% Glencoe residents, 18% non-residents, and 26% Northbrook residents, along with rising attendance trends. So this is not a marginal issue, it's a structural one. That is the one we are asking you to address. Parking at Lakefront Beach and on the adjacent residential streets should be limited to Glencoe residents. Non-residents should be directed to remote parking, including train station lots, and walk to the beach. That is a proactive solution. It reduces traffic, improves safety, and eliminates the need to rely on constant enforcement. It also reduces the burden on our public safety team. Today, when non-residents park illegally, including in front of fire hydrants, officers are forced to spend time in extreme conditions searching the beach for vehicle. I have 3 more sentences. For vehicle owners, a resident-based system would make enforcement far more efficient and focused. So my request tonight is straightforward. First, do not treat increased fines as a solution. It is not. Second, commit to a process that actually includes residents before finalizing a broader plan. And third and lastly, implement a resident-only parking model for Lakefront Beach and the surrounding streets, consistent with what has already been proven to work in our neighboring communities. We're not asking for anything unreasonable. We're asking for a solution that already exists and works and protects Glencoe residents. Thank you.
Thanks for that presentation. I have one other person signed up, Mr. Spellman. Zach Spellman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Spellman. I live on 676 Longwood, so I moved there last summer, and I got to experience my first summer on Lakefront Park in Glencoe Beach. Great summer, but it was a lot more chaotic than I was expecting. I have a 3-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old daughter. And I don't let my daughters leave my driveway. I would never let my daughter go on a bike in the summer. It's chaotic, it's scary, and I really hope we get to the bottom of this. Yesterday, I sent a text message to one of my neighbors asking, hey, when are we going to hear back from the meeting? I attended the meeting in February to discuss some of the solutions, and none of us had heard, and then ironically, I got the email today. I understand there may have been some issues with the post office. So I just want you all to hear from residents that live on the park. We need to make a change. It's unsafe. We don't want anything to happen. There's tons of new young families that live on the park, lots of young kids. I think there's 12, ironically, it's mostly female. I think there's 12 little girls under the age of 10 that live on the park right now. It's amazing for families to live there, but it's scary. I mean, I think I heard last night there was a non-resident that was engaging in sexual activity in his car on the park with an Indiana license plate. We just don't want to see anything happen. And just kind of trying to pull on the heartstrings, we need to do something. We're an outlier. We're asking for better public safety. We're not asking for crazy exclusivity. Ironically, we're the only township that doesn't have a little bit more of a resident priority parking and access system. I recognize that may have been by design for a while, but times are changing and we need to prioritize public safety. So we look forward to a collaborative process. I understand that this is the beginning. I'm grateful that we heard tonight from everyone that this is a first step. This is not the only step. So we recognize that, but we need to see change. And I know that a lot of the residents on the park are talking about this. So we're willing to help pilot things. We're willing to help fund research, whatever it takes. We want to see change. and we're going to be very proactive to make sure that we can get something that works for everyone. So thank you all.
Thanks for coming. Now's a chance for the board members to talk about what's been proposed and what we are asked to do tonight. And then also if anyone wants to respond at this point to the comments that we heard from Mr. Shapak and Mr. Spellman. Let me say that I've been, and I think we've been following the meetings and the concerns that have been expressed by the neighbors. The village is not ignoring you. So we mailed letters and they didn't arrive, and I'm sorry about that, but that's something that happens. If anybody who wants to express their views to the village is welcome to express their views, and we will make it possible for you to express your views, and we will hear you. We're going to continue to look at this. The village staff is already looking at what our neighbors are doing so that we can compare their situations and our situation, and we're going to continue to do that. I'm in favor of the proposals that we're considering voting on tonight, and I don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, so I don't want to hold off on doing anything because maybe we'll do something later. I don't mean to say, by the way, that the suggestions that have been made by our two residents are perfect or that we're necessarily doing them, but we're looking into all this, and we're going to continue to listen to our neighbors. With that, are there comments from village board members on either what's been proposed for us to act on tonight, or on the what they're thinking in terms of the comments we've had from the neighbors? Trustee Onderduck.
Yes. I just want to make sure that we're coordinating with the Park District on this. I know there's been some conversations with them concerning hours, parking. They have some very unique situations where they share facilities with other communities, such as Northbrook. And so there's some agreements that they have that are probably need to be fleshed out. But I too think that the steps that have been recommended by the public safety people make a lot of sense, especially as we're entering the season for this summer. So at our next meeting, perhaps we can have a report on the kinds of things that the Park District is doing.
The short answer is we absolutely are trying to coordinate with the Park District. The beach is under the control of the Park District. The Park District establishes all those rules. We are working with them. We're going to continue to work with them. But, we're all the Park District, the village. We're all, Glencoe folks. So we're going to try to figure this out in a sensible way. Trustee Hallwicks.
So I appreciate the local beach neighbors coming. I'm in your camp. I'm down at the beach every Sunday morning. I go down there frequently before work on paddleboard. And you can see, I go after work. I leave at 7 o'clock, and the beach is getting mobbed with people that don't live in Glencoe. So the beach closes at 7, and then it's utterly mobbed at 7:01. And on Sunday mornings, the beach is destroyed. Unless you're down there when I'm down there with a lot of Glencoe residents playing volleyball at 7:30, 8 o'clock, you don't get to see how destroyed the beach is. And it's driven me nuts forever that we allow this to happen after the beach closes, or just you can see, that what happens. So I'm totally in favor of digging deeper into what you're proposing. I'd be happy to vote tonight to at least start with this, but I would encourage you guys to keep pushing. I'll certainly have experienced what you're experiencing, and would support finding some other ways to try to control, or it's the safety aspect of what's there, because right now is not great.
Any other trustees want to comment? Okay.
Oh, I do. Thank you.
Georgia, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you for the residents who came by tonight. Thank you for the presentations from staff. I'm happy that we're talking about this. I'm happy that we are working with the Park District. We always love to collaborate with our sister agencies. I am interested in digging further. I'm interested in starting here, but I am also interested in digging further and entertaining a little bit more about what our residents tonight have spoken about. I'm curious, maybe we could talk about it later, but I have older kids now. I don't go as often, but when a few years ago when they were younger, we were happy that we could show up and park and lug all the stuff and go down. We moved here because of our beach and because of the convenience of being able to park and get to everything with a car, with a bike, or whatever. So I can only imagine how frustrating it is for everyone now. We don't go as often now because we're a little busier, but I'm interested in pursuing a little bit more about trying to see study more what our neighbors are doing and maybe try to mimic that, as one of the residents just mentioned, and try to see if we can try to preserve some of those areas for our residents who do live here, who pay taxes, and to preserve this crown jewel of our town a little bit better for us. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other trustees want to talk about this? Okay. I haven't heard anybody who thought we should not pass the ordinance that's been proposed. So is there a motion
And
to...
did you want to take A and B together?
B has some other additional items
please.
in it, so we'd need to do that separately.
Yeah. All right. So is there a motion to approve the parking enforcement and penalties ordinance in 8A?
So moved.
Second.
We need a roll call, please.
Trustee Hallwax.
Yes.
Trustee Mealopoulos.
Yes.
Trustee Underdunk.
Yes.
Trustee Rosenblatt.
Yes.
Trustee Rubin.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
The ordinance at 8A is approved. Next item on the agenda is considering...
President Rowan, sorry, before we move on, I just want to make sure that staff has adequate direction to bring back to the village board next month, perhaps, additional information and or additional recommendations relative to what's been presented this evening. I'm getting some head nods around the dais, but I want to make sure that we know what we need to bring back.
So let me say, my understanding is I'm interested to see the results of what we're doing tonight. That is, I appreciate the neighbors have said woefully inadequate, won't do the job, but I want to see what the results are, because that's important. I think we should look also at what our neighbors are doing and what their circumstances are. And and then I'd ask the staff to come back and say, okay, what else? One other thing, we should continue to be talking with the neighbors. I'm sorry that folks didn't get adequate notice, because maybe there would have been more people here, although I'm going to assume that we would have had more people saying what the two people who came when Mr. Shapek and Mr. Spellman said, that other people would have said the same thing. I'm going to assume that, even though they're not here. But we should continue. And then the third thing, like I said, we should continue to be talking with our residents about changes, and if any of the proposed changes we're considering would have an impact on other residents who don't live immediately at the beach, I want to make sure they know too. So, is that enough?
That's no problem.
Okay.
We'll put together some comprehensive outreach, and I think we've got most of the information that we need, at least from the standpoint of neighboring communities. But additional outreach to our community relative to potential additional parking regulations, and we'll bring that back in May. May 21st is the next village board
Okay.
meeting.
So, if there's more we need to do for this summer, we'll look at doing it, and we're going to continue to do what we hope is the best we can for our residents, all of them. Okay, next item is consideration of a resolution.
Can I make a comment to that?
So normally the answer would be no, but it's only 8:30. Sure, come on up.
Keep it brief. Two quick things. One is,
Come on up to the microphone so we have it on
I think
record.
the confusion of something you may have just said is what we're proposing actually protects all residents of Glencoe. It isn't so that way only people who live on the lakefront have access to the parking. It's so that they have access to the parking. And by the way, our public safety knows who they are because their plates are registered with public safety. So
Okay.
this wasn't to just make it exclusive to people who are there at the park. So
Okay, that's great.
I've got notes. I know what
Okay,
you're referencing. We've got
We
information,
know.
and that's
my only other comment I want to make is that, Steve Elrod, you were tracking a different HB bill, but we've got lovely politicians that are now pushing HB 1429. Can you make sure that you guys are covering that? That is where you can now basically be homeless in any park and live in the park, and this municipality will be able to do nothing. So that's another big one coming down the pike you guys are going to want to study.
All right, thanks. Okay. Next item, let's go to the resolution amending the fee and fine schedule, and I'll ask our public safety director to report.
Hello again. I'll be joined briefly by both Taylor and Monica, but just to start us off here, we're to discuss a resolution amending the comprehensive fee and fine schedule. As you all know, 12 years ago, the village adopted the comprehensive fee and fine schedule, which provides a comprehensive list of each and every one of those things and a dollar amount according to it. Three very brief, as kind of piggyback on into our last discussion. The parking fines, where my portion is enhanced penalties for high demand parking areas. That specifically, as highlighted, is from May 1st to October 31st. Those offenses in that beach area, the high demand area, shall be fined for each offense double the initial amount. Additionally, that also the handicapped and medical emergency parking increases it to the statutory mandatory amount of $350 by state statute, as required a village ordinance to do that. For that, generally, again, as we had highlighted, parking citations are now going to be resultant in a $100 fine for each offense in that designated area, as highlighted by that. Should I? Want to take it? So, additionally, so the electric fee, the charging idle fees. What this essentially is we are fully engaged in implementing additional charging stations, which will be open to the public. But what this does is it also establishes we want them to use those charging stations, but what we also see is other municipalities find that people just leave their car there 24 hours. So what this does is it allows us an opportunity and the authority to assess a fine on those individuals who stay far beyond their charging rate or charging time. And lastly, the tent and permit fees. We do have a lot of different organizations and or private parties that are erecting large-scale tents within for events. We're grateful to have that, but that also has an impact on us because the village then has to conduct a life safety inspection, a building inspection, have the Safe Built or private vendor come out to conduct safety inspections as well as for fire code, our fire inspectors. So that is to assess a fee just to recoup a portion of that. That is all. Any questions as to that I can hopefully offer, or
Anyone have any questions? Do we need to hear from anybody else?
No. You can if you like. I can talk some more about it.
No, this is good.
I know you like I know you like these to go.
Brevity is the source of all speaker points. Is there a motion to approve the resolution amending the comprehensive fee and fine schedule?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we need a roll call.
Trustee Hallwax?
Yes.
Trustee Mealopoulos?
Yes.
Trustee Onderdonk? Trustee Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Trustee Rubin?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right. Next item on the agenda is consideration of an ordinance adopting a zoning code amendment regarding the regulation of non-residential uses in residential zoning districts. And I'll ask our Development Services Director Taylor Baxter to present. Taylor.
Thank you, President Rowan, members of the board. This is the final step in a three-step process of a proposed zoning code amendment related to the regulation of non-residential uses in the village's residential zoning districts. You may remember this was initially referred by this board to the Zoning Commission in January. As a review, why are we having this discussion? This is related to concerns with how the village can protect its residential districts from the potential impacts of non-residential uses in those districts. As we mentioned in January, as we discussed in January, this is related to some concerns about the new state parking law. To review, that state parking law, which goes into effect on June 1st, will prevent the village from enforcing any minimum off-street parking requirements within a half mile of a transit station, which is a significant part of the village. Currently, the village can apply various off-street parking requirements to these non-residential uses, which does limit some of the sites that these can go on. Those off-street parking requirements also trigger some screening and landscaping requirements, which are another way that the village can apply some additional control on how these sites are developed. Some of that's going away. This is not just about parking, however. There are some underlying ongoing concerns about how these uses are regulated, but that change to state parking law really kind of pushed us in this direction to have this conversation. So in summary, this is a discussion about how the village should regulate these non-residential uses to allow them where appropriate. They are many of them are already located in these districts, but also to help us mitigate any potential negative impacts they might have. So currently, there are some by right uses that are allowed in single-family residential districts. By right means they don't have to go through any discretionary review process. Those include religious congregations, schools, including preschools, golf clubs, and parks. The deciding factor right now is lot size. Typically a 200% minimum lot size. If you're over that lot size, you can locate these uses in a residential district in that location with no public input and no opportunity for any conditions of approval. So this debate, this discussion is really centered on, is that the best way to handle these uses? Location requirements, again, 200% minimum lot size in the RA, RB, and RC districts. In the RD district, that's along Green Bay Road, 20,000 square foot minimum. If you're over that lot size, you can go there. Off-street parking and associated landscaping requirements, as I said, those have limited where they could go, but we're losing the ability to enforce that, which removes a layer of our ability to manage these uses. So this was referred to the Zoning Commission. The Zoning Commission first heard this in March and continued their discussion into April. They discussed a lot of different aspects of this. There were a lot of different considerations. They talked about the list of allowable uses. Is that list appropriate? They talked about RLUIPA. RLUIPA is the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. This is a federal act from 2000-ish, which basically says that if you are applying a land use regulation to a religious use, you can't be stricter with that use than you could be to a non-religious use with a similar impact. So the Zoning Commission had to consider, especially how we regulate religious congregations in our residential zoning districts, to make sure we're not treating them any worse than non-religious uses with a similar impact. A lot of the discussion focused on minimum lot size. Is this really the best way to determine where these uses should go? Should it be a yes or no based on, are you, for example, 20,000 square feet? 20,000 square feet you can go, 19,999 you can't. Is that really the best way to handle where these uses can go and how we regulate them? If so, are the current lot size limits appropriate? We talked about development standards. How should we apply gross floor area limits to these uses where they may not currently apply? Should we have additional screening, et cetera? Conditional uses, we talked about conditional uses. That would be a way to allow these uses without public hearings, but only under certain conditions. SUP, special use permit requirements, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then there's a lot of discussion about, because of the fact that we have so many of these long-established religious congregations, schools, parks, golf clubs throughout single-family residential districts in the village, how can we make sure that any changes that we make don't have an unnecessarily harsh impact on those uses, which have coexisted quite well for many decades with their surrounding single-family residences. So the Zoning Commission made a recommendation to approve this zoning code amendment. This is spelled out in a resolution, which is included in your agenda packet. It's also echoed in the adopting ordinance. There are several points that they're recommending. The first of which is to require a special use permit for non-residential uses in residential zoning districts. Special use permit is a two-step process. It is a public hearing with the Zoning Commission. The Zoning Commission makes a recommendation to the Village Board. The Village Board makes a final decision. A special use process includes a set of criteria that are in the zoning code, which are really well tailored towards helping to mitigate potential impacts on nearby communities. That process is an opportunity for the village to apply conditions of approval to any special use permit with the intent of helping to mitigate any potential negative impacts. Next, because of that special use process now being in place as recommended, if that is adopted, the Zoning Commission would recommend removing the minimum lot size for non-residential uses in residential zoning districts, provided that that SUP review process is in place. So essentially, the Zoning Commission says the SUP process is a better way to handle these rather than a yes or no minimum lot size. They discuss the fact that potentially these non-residential uses might have a very similar impact on a 20,000 square foot lot as on a 19,000 square foot lot. And so that should not be the deciding factor according to the Zoning Commission. Instead, it should go through a lot by lot SUP review process. Third, clarifying code language to require all non-residential uses in residential zoning districts to comply with gross floor area requirements for single-family residences. That means that you cannot build a new, for example, preschool building or religious use building any larger than you could build a single-family home in that district unless you got zoning relief through a public hearing. Fourth, allow religious congregations and private golf clubs to apply for SUP relief from bulk, setback, and height requirements that are currently only available to village uses. This is a little bit complicated, but bulk, that's gross floor area, setback, and height requirements. You can currently apply for variations for these to allow some relief from these. However, the zoning board has very strict limits on what they can allow with these. For example, a 15% floor area increase, a 20% setback reduction. They cannot even consider anything any greater relief than that. Village uses, which includes park and school uses, are allowed to get essentially unlimited relief from those zoning requirements through a special use permit process. Because the Zoning Commission is recommending now applying some special use permit requirements on these uses, they felt it would be appropriate to allow them to also apply for this additional relief through a special use permit process, which would come to the village board. And finally, the grandfathering of non-residential uses. The Zoning Commission recommends exempting non-residential uses that are established at the time of adoption, that's today, of this amendment from new SUP requirements for projects that otherwise meet all zoning code requirements. So if an established school, church, synagogue, etc., wants to do a project on their property that otherwise meets all zoning code requirements, they would not have to go through the special use process. In the future, new uses, newly established uses would have to go through it. There are some exceptions to this. If these established uses purchase additional property that they don't have now, to use that additional property, they'd have to go through the special use. If they close down for a year, they'd have to go through a special use process. If they relocated elsewhere in the village, they'd have to go through a special use process. But the intent of this was really to make sure that those long established uses don't have to go through don't have to go through an excessive process when they're not currently having any significant negative impacts on neighbors. We did get some public comments, a letter generally in support of this from a representative of a religious congregation. We had one letter generally opposed from a resident that was at the meeting last month. The letter in opposition was I would say, to summarize, questioning why we're going through this process, questioning the point of this process. Didn't see a problem, trying to solve a problem that doesn't really exist. there's an adopting ordinance attached to your agenda packet. So the motion tonight would be, if you determine it to be appropriate, to approve that ordinance with any changes determined to be appropriate. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Before we do that, the village attorney, Mr. Elrod, had a point he wanted to make. And then, when he's done, I want to go back through, because I have some questions about 3, 4, and 5 of your points. So you can put them up, and then I can ask those questions.
Well, thank you, President Rowan. I thought that this was particularly in light of the conversation we had earlier about state legislation, or in that case, proposed state legislation. This is actually a good example of the village of Glencoe responding to a state enactment that had incredible unintended consequences. The state adopted the People Over Parking Act. Good cause. They wanted to encourage transit-oriented districts, but the law that they adopted, the general law that applies statewide, is to prohibit enforcement of parking restrictions within 1.5 miles of transit stations. Well, that basically is the entire village of Glencoe. It may be different in the city of Chicago, but this is a statewide law. It applied uniquely here, and the village promptly responded by very cleverly figuring out a way to still allow for local zoning in certain areas to protect residential neighborhoods by putting together the proposal. You all saw this when we adopted the red flag resolution on this subject back in January, and then it went through our plan commission process. I thought it was an interesting parallel to the conversation we had earlier this evening.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Let me just say, on your third point, if we go through 3, 4, and 5, it looks to me like the third point, clarifying code language to require non-residential uses have to comply with floor area ratio requirements. I think that's probably an example of what Village Attorney Elrod was talking about as to something we should do, and that seems like clearly a good idea. We could go to 4. I question this only because I remember from back when I was doing the zoning commission that the zoning, that when you have an SUP, you look at various criteria in deciding whether to approve it. Could the bulk setback and height requirements that currently exist be considered as part of this new, exception of expanding for everybody to village uses in the SUP?
What do you mean by currently exists?
So, non-village uses are subject to bulk setback and height requirements.
That's right.
The new proposal is we're going to have, instead of those requirements, we're going to allow a SUP that would potentially expand what's available to religious congregations and golf clubs to what's available for village uses. And
So-
I just want, in deciding what to do in the SUP, can the zoning commission and then the village board consider those different, bulk and height and what have you, in whether to grant the SUP, or is that somehow going to be wiped out because we've expanded to village uses?
No, I don't think so. And I apologize for misunderstanding the question. But so number 3 here.
And it's 4 really, but okay.
Okay, so I'll start with number 3
4.
quickly. Number 3, the code is unclear about how to apply floor area requirements to non-residential uses. It clearly says that park district uses should abide by this. We've consulted with the village attorney in the past, and the determination was that the code does not apply them to other non-residential uses. What this would do is it would apply those floor area requirements to all uses, churches, schools, etc. So because of that, there are likely to be some of these uses that are now over, well-established, long-established non-resident uses that are over the floor area limits, potentially more than the 15% that could be granted a variation. And so applying this relief, this SUP relief, would allow those uses which have long been established in the residential districts that may be more than 15% over, for example, a floor area limit. If they need to do something, some project that would add an amount of floor area, they might not be able to go through the zoning variation process. This would allow them to apply for additional relief, but only through a special use permit process.
Okay, and then how's that work with the grandfathering? Is the grandfathering applies to the applicant or to the place?
To the use that's there. So the grandfathering, if you exist, let's say that you exist as a religious congregation at 123 Main Street in a residential use right now, you exist there now and you're established. Let me back up 1 second. If you're a new use and if you're a new non-residential use and you want to move into a residential district, to establish that use under this amendment, you would have to go through an SUP process. Also, to expand that use in any way in the future, you would have to go through an additional SUP process. What this is trying to avoid is to require an existing use that is there now to go through a full public hearing process to do even small expansions, because that would essentially become a non-conforming use at that point. So even a small expansion of that could potentially force them to go through a special use permit process. What this would do is for those established uses, they could avoid that so long as they're meeting every other zoning code requirement. If they're not meeting every other zoning code requirement, they could go through the SUP process in number 4, or potentially even a zoning variation
But let me
process.
expand on that to get to your question, because we dealt with this not too long ago. The grandfather provision would apply, as Taylor said, to the use. So if someone were to buy a church building and no longer use it as a church and want to use it as they would not be able to enjoy the grandfathering. And many of you will recall a situation like that. So that's
right.
That's very clear.
A church is a religious congregation. If they closed within a year, a synagogue could open up. That's a religious congregation. It'd be grandfathered. A school could not open up. A golf club could not open up
or
in
a
that
residence.
same building. That would trigger an SUP at that point.
Correct.
Okay. Very helpful. Thank you. Are there other questions, comments from the board? I don't see any. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the regulation of non-residential uses in residential zoning districts ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Let's have a roll call, please.
Trustee Hallwax?
Yes.
Trustee Mealopoulos?
Yes.
Trustee Onderdonk?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Trustee Rubin?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Taylor, and thank you to the Zoning Commission for helping us figure this out. Last item on regular business is consideration of a resolution authorizing the village manager to execute a contract with Halloran and Yauch, Inc. of Lake Forest, Illinois for the driving range T construction in an amount not to exceed $225,000, and to authorize a 50% deposit upon ratification of the contract. And I'll ask Stella Nanos, who's our general manager of the golf club, to present. Welcome, Stella.
Thank you. Good evening, President Rowan and members of the board. I have a presentation I'm going to make very briefly. The Glencoe Golf Club project is well underway, and we have been working on several projects that are considered owner's items. The driving range T construction project involves the comprehensive reconstruction of the driving range T area, which was necessitated by the construction of the new parking lot serving the clubhouse. The range is a vital revenue source and a core component of the Golf Academy. The original Budget for this project was $100,000. After the budget was established, the scope and size of the project changed significantly and has led to higher than expected bids. We assembled an RFP. 2 bidders responded. One was at $277,000. The other was at $286,000. Since these were significantly higher than budget, we discussed options to reduce the cost of the project, contacted both bidders, and asked for clarification and a breakdown of pricing. Halloran and Yaw lowered their bid by $60,100, which is reflective of a decrease in the cost and installation of the sod, a decrease in mobilization costs, and a reduction in shaping and subgrade work, with the GGC staff removing spoils and assisting with the finished grade. The requested contract value is still over budget by $125,000. To help offset the overage, staff identified $28,500 in other capital project deferrals or scope modifications, including delaying several smaller projects that the golf course had in their capital plan. Staff recommends executing a contract with the original low bidder, Halloran and Yaw, for $225,000, with the additional funds above the available as a project contingency. Also, to ensure that the project work can get underway as soon as possible, staff is requesting immediate authorization for a 50% project deposit to be made starting tomorrow. If the village board does follow through with the consideration, we'd like to do this to ensure the range is operational for the peak season, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for the report. Quick question. So, briefly, what was the sort of change that made the price so much higher than we thought?
Sure. The scope changed. So the biggest one was the size of the driving range tee, but it also required additional subgrade, drainage, and finish work, and additional sod and irrigation work. So all of those components put together.
Okay. Obviously, I hate to write a check for this big amount, but as long as we get lien waivers, okay. Any comments or questions from the board? If not, is there a motion to approve the resolution for the village manager to execute this contract?
So moved.
Second.
Let's have a roll call, please.
Trustee Hallwax?
Yes.
Trustee Mealopoulos?
Yes.
Trustee Onderdonk?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Trustee Rubin?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Okay, that concludes our regular business. Is there any other business before we move to closed session?
No, I don't think, we don't need it.
We do. We close session.
We have a place.
Just
We
a
do.
brief one.
We're getting a new lawyer to talk about water, but we already did that. Okay, I don't see any other business. Is there a motion to move to closed session for, are we doing minutes?
Yeah. We are.
For C21, closed session minutes, C1, personnel. Is there a motion to go to closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Do we need
Roll call.
roll call?
Trustee Hallwax?
Yes.
Trustee Mealopoulos?
Yes.
Trustee Onderdonk?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Trustee Rubin?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Motion carries. We're going into closed session.